Hey guys, this is a crash course video over the causes and effects of the Spanish-American War. I was going to do a screencastify, so you'd see me talking with the slides, but obviously none of us counted on the internet being down. So I'm just going to read y'all slides and explain some things to you. So first off, okay, a big reason why we got involved in the Spanish-American War was because of conflict down in Cuba. So your first bullet, Cuba had been a colony of Spain since 1492. Which a lot of you guys probably recognize that year as being familiar. Well, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Okay, so Cuba had been a possession of Spain for a really long time. However, during the 1800s, a lot of Spain's colonial possessions start to rebel because Spain had, I'm telling you, they had an empire spread all across the world. You know, they had the Philippines, they had Guam in the Pacific, and then over in the Americas, they had everything. At one point, Spain controlled a lot of the American West and Florida. You know, they controlled Mexico, they controlled several countries in South America. But during the 1800s, they begin to lose a lot of those territories as a lot of independence movements start to happen throughout all of Latin America, especially. Well, Cuba wants a piece of that pie. They want their independence. So in 1895, to try to put that down, Spain decides to send troops into Cuba and force the people there to live in concentration camps, basically like prison camps. Now, some Cuban immigrants who are living in the United States obviously request that the United States government intervene and do something about this. And the images that go back to the United States are horrific of what is being seen in Cuba in these camps. But the United States does not get involved just yet. What starts to kind of add some fuel to the fire as far as there being a divide between us and the Spanish was event one was the Delome letter. Okay, now Delome was an ambassador from the United States to Spain, so he was the Spanish ambassador. So, like, as an ambassador, he was supposed to represent the Spanish government and, you know, talk with the United States government and all that deal. Well, in this letter from a Spanish ambassador to Spain that was intercepted by the journalist, he criticized President McKinley. He said that he was a weak leader who had no backbone and no spine. He was a spineless leader. Now, he's insulted, you know, our commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. So when journalists take this, okay, and this makes Americans really angry. It angers many Americans as they hear this because this ambassador, this person that's supposed to represent the Spanish government, just called our president weak. Okay, so this is kind of the tipping point, okay? So McKinley has that backed up against him, is people are starting to wonder, maybe our president is weak. Because remember, he said he wasn't going to imperialize, but now you have a dude from another country who has called him weak, an ineffective leader. So McKinley is feeling this pressure from within the United States to prove that he is a capable leader. Because another thing that's going on in the United States at this time is there's this push to prove that we're a man and that, you know, to prove you're a man, you can go off to war. And so Teddy Roosevelt was one of these such people. All right, but so McKinley is facing those pressures from those Jingos, those war seekers. And the Jingos kind of made a mountain out of a molehill with the USS Maine. So in early 1898, riots had broke out in Havana, Cuba, which had threatened American property and people. So McKinley decides to send the battleship down to the harbor, okay, to protect U.S. citizens and their property. Now, to this day, we are not sure what happened, okay, because the USS Maine explodes in Havana Harbor. Nobody knows for sure to this day what happened. Many think it was an internal mechanism, something went wrong, just made it go kerplunk. However, these people that were wanting us to go to war with Spain, this was like an excuse, something that they could make, again, a mountain out of a molehill out of. They could take a molehill and make a mountain out of it. And they said that it was the work of an enemy and that the Spanish were responsible for the explosion. So President McKinley decides that he's going to try to get payment from Spain for the Maine. This also starts a little cute cry in the United States to go to war. Remember the Maine to blank with Spain. All right. Now, part of the reason why the lead up to the Spanish-American War was so exaggerated was the journalists. Again, they were the ones that publicized that Delome letter where the Spanish guy called President McKinley weak. And when they reported on the USS Maine, they made it seem like it was this big ordeal and blew it way out of proportion. This type of journalism was known as yellow journalism. And so, yellow journalism is journalism that magnified events, okay? So again, we talked about making a molehill out of a mountain. It took these events that were seemingly small, not a big deal, and it made them into these huge ordeals, like the Maine. We weren't sure what happened. The journalists in the United States, their job is to sell newspapers, right? So they're going to make it sound like it's the work of an enemy. And if you're looking at the slides, depending on if the internet's working or not, you see those headlines right there. It was the work of an enemy. And, Teddy Roosevelt is convinced that the Spanish were, the perpetrators of this attack. We didn't know. But these journalists want to sell newspapers, so they are going to exaggerate the headline. But all this does is it fuels this desire to go to war even more. So the press led many in the American public wanting to go to war with Spain. And lastly, these war seekers were known as Jingos. Okay? So the United States finally ends up going to war with Spain because these Jingos, these war seekers, finally wear down McKinley's desire to stay out of this conflict. He's been threatened. He's been told, well, not threatened, excuse me. His manhood has been questioned. People think that he's not a man and that he's a weak leader. And so he's got to do something to prove that he is a man. And so he starts to take a little bit more aggressive actions with the Spanish. Ultimately, he allows Congress to demand a withdrawal, a Spanish withdrawal out of Cuba. Okay, we don't want to go to war, but at the same time, it's like we want to get Spain the heck out of Dodge and get them out of Cuba. Okay, and not only that, but we also our ships do a blockade around Cuba, and ultimately, this leads Spain to declare war on the United States. But we obviously kind of got the ball rolling with some semi-aggressive actions, and then the United States declares war on Spain the next day. Now, the Spanish-American War, we had all this buildup, but the effects of the Spanish-American War and the war itself is very anticlimactic compared to what we've talked about so far. Okay, so the war only lasts 10 weeks. Okay, so we're talking less than 3 months. In fact, it's known as a splendid little war because it was that quick of a war. We just go in and we dominate the Spanish. Again, the Spanish are kind of on the down and down. Their empire is not what it used to be. Their empires start to crumble. We lose less than 500 Americans in combat, okay, in this war. Now, many of them, a few thousand Americans do die of some of these tropical diseases like malaria and things like that. But this war is fought all around the world. It's fought in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. I mean, this is a war all over the place, but every place we're fighting the Spanish, we're just dominating. Okay, this is really the Rough Riders in Cuba, led by Teddy Roosevelt, was a big deal. And so this was a very, very, very quick war, but it is a huge war because it gave the United States... One second.
And Mrs. Strickland would like your flags when you're finished. So teachers, please encourage students not to destroy the flags, but to give them back to you so that we can give them to Ms. Strickland. And everyone have a great day. And if you're willing to have cover for the rest of the day, please let me know by coming by the office. Thank you.
So it gave the United States a lot of new places or former Spanish colonies, including Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Now, next week, we'll talk all about how the United States intervened in the Philippines. That's what you guys will do on Tuesday. Unfortunately, I will not be here again. Just some more school stuff going on. And we'll also talk about Cuba a little bit. Okay? But the impact of the Spanish-American War is before this war, the United States is really not seen as a world power. But after the war, we dominate this empire, the Spanish. In less than 10 weeks, the war is over. So the United States starts to be seen seriously as more and more of a global power. All right, if you have any questions, you just let me know.